we go. I can record things. So I guess that we're having an election here. They've kind of in theory just called it, or at least it's getting reported that it's called.
Snap, snap, snap.
I know,
snap,
right?
Snap, snap, snap.
I think they're saying July 4th, which I think is very funny.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not going to improve anything here, but a bunch of Tories are going to be really sad. So I like that.
Yeah.
Like that. That's
good luck.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got. You know, we're about to change the color of the ties on the politicians. So, yeah. Cool, brilliant. Are we gonna do something about society? Oh God, no. Managed decline. Managed decline. Woo.
Yeah. I think in both America and England, it's now managed decline, or it's now badly managed decline versus horribly managed decline. Those are your options.
Yeah.
You get, and that's what you get. So
yeah. So we're switching up to badly managed decline. So I suppose the difference here, it's slightly different to America, in that we don't have. We don't have the insane religious aspect, religion doesn't really play into any of this, although Islamophobia does very heavily. And there's weird culture war stuff, how we're crazy and a lot of us are TERFs, right? But that is that's all in the labor side too. So that's not going to improve at all for anyone. So that's cool. There's some culture war stuff in there, but labor's just conceded to all of it. They're like, no, we're absolutely also gonna crack down on trans people existing in public. That's gonna be cool. So that has nothing to do with it. But what is kind of somewhat in play is that labor, I think, might embezzle slightly less directly to their friends. Because, the Tories, basically, they're well, the UK exists for us to, take money from it and give it to, 5 dudes that I'm friends with. Whereas Labour is
to be fair to
shamed.
them, that they got history on their side with that one. So,
yeah, to be fair, that's true. I mean, so, I don't know, maybe that'll happen. But, it's embarrassing out here. It's and the thing that's really sad is that there are people who actually believe there's going to, things are going to improve as a result of this, and I feel kind of bad for them because it's going to be very confusing when they learn that it's not about your team winning. Actual changes need to be made, but hey ho,
I don't it's excuse me, I don't know that I don't know how it is there specifically, but here it seems there are more people who seem to be waking up to the fact that they're that the problems are existential, not just for America, but for the planet. And there seem to be more people over here waking up to that fact. I mean, the problem is that we have this two-party system, and Democrats and Republicans sit on the ballot lines, and and the leadership of both of them have bought into some version of the same plan, which is we are going to bleed everyone and everything dry to keep the status quo going for another year. Day, another second, whatever we have to do to keep that going, we will do it, and damn the consequences. And so it's just well, I mean, you get you just, it's one of those things where it really sucks, because when you can see there is a movement, there is a foment among people, among a lot of people, a large amount of people in this country, especially people under 50, but there is almost no way to represent, to do anything with that, because there's no bigger thing. It's just like a bunch of little groups clashing, and they're clashing against police and stuff like that. And the police are just putting them down easily, or not easily, but putting them down regardless. And it's just like, yeah, I've said it before, but man, it's hard right now not to just be like, Lenin was right.
I know, right? I know.
Like, all of the spontaneous outbursts, all of the spontaneous action, spontaneous terrorism, spontaneous labor unrest, things like that, that stuff is good, is to be expected and is a good impulse within people. But if it doesn't have like a broader movement behind it, it's not going to cohere, and we're not going to meet the goals that we have. And like, you see these college students fighting and struggling, and they're just like having it out with campus police and actual police, and then the campus admin and everything like that. But I mean, basically now the admins are like, well, we're just waiting it out till the end of the semester, and like, for all the gains that these students have made, I mean, hard-won gains, won through like great action and violent strife, it's going to suck that there is basically like a capper, like an end cap on this. And like, that is why we need a bigger organization. And I don't know if that's reviving the Comintern, or what are we, what would it be now, the 5th International or the 6th? I don't fucking know. I don't care. I don't know.
Do
what
not
it is,
at
I don't
us.
give a shit.
Don't tell us. We don't care.
I don't know. I don't care. Let's get it out. We can call it the 5th/6th Internet. I don't know. Whatever. But like, yeah, there has to be something, because this shit fucking sucks. And I like the planet Earth. I don't want it to die. I like human beings. For the most part, I don't want them to die.
I mean, like, with the exception of like, redacted, I don't, I'm generally pro humans living. So it's just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I wish sometimes I was more inured to it all and I didn't care so deeply, but here we are. Hey ho. Gonna get through it. But it's just kind of like, I'm starting to get all the excited text messages. Well, okay, like, to be fair, none of my friends really believe that this is going to change anything. But everyone's like, oh, there it is. The election's been called. And I'm like, okay. It just means that, like, June is about to be really head up and annoying. That's all.
I will be honest. I am not jealous of England for a lot of things. I mean, obviously there are better things. NHS, what's left of it, is still a lot
still
better
good.
Than what we have here. I am extremely jealous of the fact that you guys basically get like a 1 month election cycle.
It's so much better.
This shit here sucks. It sucks so much. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. I don't like. I know what you're saying. I know it's, we're going to get down to it and people are going to vote. We're going to figure it out. I don't need to hear about it for 18 months.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
It's so bad. And it just wastes everyone's time anyway, because it's like the last, like, basically from, the last year and a half, as you say, it's just electioneering and nothing actually gets done. So it's just exhausting. Like, it's much better to have the short process, to be honest. But anyway, that'll be funny. But if you hear me, like, if every week from now until July 4th, I'm like, wow, at the top of every show, you know why. Yeah, I'm going to sustain a lot of psychic damage over the next few weeks. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's just psychic damage all the way down, I think. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least here in America, it's just like, well, here's this, and you have to like pull out the the positive and the good stuff you can. And there is good stuff, let's be clear. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, all right. Let's talk about saints. And little cool looking halo things. All right. 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome back to We're Not So Different, a podcast about how we've always been idiots. My name is Luke Waters, and I'm an amateurish historian, and as always, I'm joined by Dr. Eleanor Yanniga, who is anything but. Today, we're talking about saints. Saints. So many saints. But yeah, before we get there, we got a couple questions from patrons. First one comes from Bavarian Bard, who says, Dr. Eleanor mentioned her series on women working in the Middle Ages and the, quote, letter on virginity, unquote, and how a random guy just went, no, that didn't happen. I'm curious to where the modern myth that women never worked or cared about their exploitation started. I have a suspicion it all started for England-based societies around the time of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the middle class, and it ignores that working class women have always worked their own jobs or alongside their husbands, and the work of the upper middle class women of caring for children, running a household is not seen as work.
Yeah, well, preach. But yeah, you've kind of like hit the nail on the head here. And as far as I would concern and what I've contended, for example, in my book, is that this is an Enlightenment affliction. And when we have the turn to the Enlightenment, one of the big things that happens is all these philosophers with their big brains decided that they were going to explain scientifically why society was like it is. So basically, they want to stop using God to explain the oppression of women. And they're like, oh, it's science, actually. And the reason you little ladies can't be in power is you just suck. But it's you can't get mad at me. It's science. And just like, the brain pan of the woman is smaller. And basically they would say that like women are naturally, quote unquote, subordinate to men. And that is the way things have to be. So as a part of this has a knock-on effect very specifically for bourgeois women, right? Because as rightly stated, working class women continued to work the entire time, and it was just like neither here nor there. Of course they were going to be doing that. But the sort of people who like went to salons and, were philosophers and things like that, they were like, oh yeah, like women don't work now. And of course, very rightly in this, it was stated that like this just means work outside the home, because as a part of the new scientific way of organizing the world, the idea was that women were domestic scientifically, right? And that like, out in nature, women will just quote unquote naturally take care of children. And so as a result, the bourgeois women see a retreat from workspace in the outside world more generally and into the home. This culminates in the late 19th century and early 20th century, where we see the highest rates of women who are simply domestic workers and not industrial workers or, skilled workers of any type. So you see the kind of retreat of women into the nursery and things like that. But it's a forced move, and it's one that's kind of argued for. So like it's not like there's laws that say women can't do it. It's just that it becomes unseemly, right? This is especially true of English speaking places, yes, but it's also true in France. It's true in like the Germanic world, but it is pretty much a white people thing. Then this all gets kind of compacted in like the post-war era. So there's a lot is like made of World War II, women are working for the first time, and it's like, shut the fuck up. Like we all love Rosie the Riveter, et cetera, but basically what that meant was just that more women were drawn into industrialized processes than had been before, or women who were from positions in society that meant that they had retreated to the domestic realm re-entered the workforce. So that wasn't particularly new in any way, shape, or form. And so you do see like some more things come up with that. But then the kind of post-war consensus, what you were supposed to get in return from the government for, participating in World War II was this theoretical suburbanized lifestyle wherein, the man went to work and the woman stayed home and bobbity-bobbity-ba. Of course, again, huge caveats around this, because whilst we do see an expansion of this among even the working classes in America, very specifically at this time, it's also very racialized, right? Because this is a white people thing, minorities are working and everybody's working the whole time. But as a part of that, they mythologize this past, right? So that to explain that happening, they're like, oh yeah, and women have never worked before. Hey ho, wasn't that crazy how you were all working for a second there during World War II? Anyway, back to the kitchen with you, sweetheart. Chop chop, get out of here, right? And so that requires this mythology of the way women work, and also the way that people tend to think about history, for the most part, is if people were doing X, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, then even further back in time, they must have been doing the same thing but harder, right?
Yeah.
That's just how people tend to think of history. So it's like, oh, well, if women weren't working in the 1890s, then in the 1590s, they were definitely not working. And it's like, no, they were, And so, but it also has to do with the general desire to, create a hierarchy in which women are permanently at the bottom. And so it's like, domestic work is never work. It's always easy. Despite the fact that it's like, oh yeah, really? Because that's funny, because the minute rich people get money, they're immediately hiring someone else to do domestic work. They don't want to do that because it sucks. But it just kind of cements a hierarchy in people's brains. And if they don't learn about it, they will just simply make assumptions. And even when they are learning about it, it will hurt their brains. Unfortunately. But yeah, that's the shortest way I can say that it's complex, but it's a modern issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there is also a good way to look at how old institutionalized ideals like patriarchy are reinforced as new information comes about, because as you said, there we've gone over countless things, and there are countless examples of the past of people being like, well, we aren't as chaste and as good as we used to be. We are, we're not even standing on the shoulders of giants. We're just in their shadows, and we are meager things or whatever. But, as things change and as things modernize, it's now like, instead of it's that way because the Bible says so, or because, that's how it's always been, it's that way because of science or whatever. And so you see how you get these new things, but you just keep tacking on, the same stuff, because, you've been having these moral panics about, women getting too uppity, and, slaves getting too uppity, serfs getting too uppity for thousands of years. But now it's like, hey, no, actually this is what science says. It's just like, okay, man, cool. Yeah, but I think basically the myths that women or slaves or peasants or whoever never really cared about their exploitation is just modern cope or whatever you want to call it to explain away these things. Because when we started the show, one of the things we started on was how medieval people peasants would get really annoyed, and they were like, I don't want to do this shit. I don't want to go fight in a war for this guy who I hate. So I'm just going to go knock around the pikes for a little bit and then come home. Or this guy's driving us too hard. I'm going to half-ass it in the field or something like that. And there are many examples of that. And this is just the same thing, because if you talk to some people now, they're like, oh, well, no one cared about being a serf. They loved their lord.
They loved it.
It's like some of them did, but not all of them.
There's always been bootlickers, okay? They walk amongst us even today, but not all of them, dude. So
I just think that's a good, it's a good overall thing, not to take it away from focus on women, because that's obviously what the question was about, but it's the same,
absolutely, yeah.
Oh yeah, nobody cared about that. Yeah, dude, everybody loved being a slave back in the day. You're right. It was fucking great. That's why they kept him chained up, because it was fun. Anyway, yeah, Bavarian Bard, thank you for the question. Next one we got is from Feckless Xer, who says, just found out a couple of hilarious things. Despite the fact that my mom gave up her British citizenship after immigrating to the Commonwealth country I was born in, I can still get my British passport if I 1, scrape up 1,000 quid. 2, swear to be a subject of his goutishness, King Chuck of the sausage fingers. And 3, provide documents. B, the best part, this would mean that I could press for membership to my grandparents' guild, the Cappers, Pinners, Weird Drawers, and Linen Drapers, which would also make me a free man of Chester.
Woo!
And that's awesome, by the way. I know guilds have been covered in previous episodes, so my question revolves around being a citizen of a city. What privileges, responsibilities, and duties would go along with being a free man of a city? Could I wander around the city without being branded a vagabond or tramp?
So anyway, so happy for you that you could theoretically be in a guild.
That's cool.
That is really cool. Is it worth it? It's like, like on the one hand, you can be a guild member. On the other hand, you have to be a subject. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And it's like, people used to put up with it because at least you got EU citizenship out of it. But now, it's like, one of the most American things about me is that I won't get citizenship because I won't be a subject. Although maybe that's just a communist thing. I'm going to go with saying that it's just a communist thing about me. Yeah, I'm going to change the way I frame that. Anyway, so yeah, I know most about being a free man of London because, that's where I live. But the free man thing generally means that you're literally free. So usually what part of this would be is if you showed up in a city, you had to make it there for a year and a day. And after a year and a day, like your feudal lord couldn't come and drag you back because you're now a free man. So basically it just means that like you don't owe shit to a landlord somewhere else, right? Like you might have a landlord in a city, but what you owe to a landlord in a city is rent, right? Not rent, and you gotta apply to them for getting married to someone, and you gotta like work on their garden a couple times a year, and right? So one of the big things that it gives you is not necessarily duties, but a lack of duties, right? One thing that I know that we can do in London, if you're a free man, I'm fucking on Justin's ass. He can apply to be a free man, and he hasn't done it yet. And I'm like,
do it.
I know, right? It's driving me crazy. If you're
already a subject of the crown, what's
going on
doing here?
But if you become a free man of the city of London, you can drive sheep over London Bridge. And I'm like, yeah.
I would do that and rent sheep.
Yeah.
I would rent 2 sheep to do that.
Yeah, and I'd be like, you see this
and they'd
shit?
be like, some guy coming up and be like, no.
No.
The Magna Carta says I can do this, and they're like, it doesn't say that, and I'm like, well, something does.
Something does.
I got a free man right here.
Woo!
Baby. Get the fuck out.
Right, that's right. So
that's awesome.
So a lot of the time, what it means is that
awesome.
You can bring goods in and out of cities, basically, without having to be taxed on it. So, especially if you're like a capper, pinner, weird drawer, and linen draper, you could bring, cloth in order to make things, and you could take those things back out without having to pay taxes on it. So again, it's like a freedom thing. Usually then you have to pay like a city tax that helps to kind of like that would usually then be kicked up to the king, because as a general rule of thumb, cities are royal. Right. And so again, being a member of a city, the other thing that it means is that you go to king's courts for legal matters. So instead of being like under the jurisdiction of a noble, you get access to the king's justice. Nice. We all do now. However, so hey ho, it is what it is. But yeah, it's got like kind of specific things. But I'm really torn by this, because on the one hand, I would like to be a guild member. Like I've looked into it. Like you can pay them off sometimes. Usually you have to be invited, but sometimes you can pay them off. And I'm like, shit, I don't know. Damn. You know, like I want to be.
I want to be in a guild. What do you
Yeah.
do? Fuck all, but that's not the point.
I know. Come on. I want to join like the Pepperers or like there's the Salters are really near the Barbican. I could be a Salter. You know.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Join one of the yeah.
Any guilds listening, I am considering. You know, I would consider membership. Please let me in.
Joining the International Brotherhood of Jazz Dancers, Pastry Chefs, and Nuclear Technicians Guild in
That's
England.
right.
Feckless Xer, thank you for the question, and good luck with your decision.
Let us know. Let us know.
That is a real toughie right there. But
Sophie's
let
choice.
us know. Yeah, a real real Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, and if you want to ask us questions like this that we're forced at gunpoint to answer here on the show, then by all means, please subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/WNSDpod. You get bonus episodes. You get 2 bonus episodes a month, like the one we're doing later this week on. And we're talking Habsburg news. Surprisingly, the Habsburg's still in the news, and we're going to talk about a lot of it. It'll be fun. We've also got our book club series on The Name of the Rose going. So check that out. $5 a month, patreon.com/WNSDpod. We are so close to 500 patrons. I think the last time I saw it was like $4.99. So yeah, get us there, and we'll have to figure out something special to do for that, I guess. But yeah, it'll be cool. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so anyway, on to the main show. Folks, we're back, and this time we don't have a series or interview for you, just a good old-fashioned standalone episode on sainthood and canonization and the exploits of a few saints. Now, growing up as a good evangelical Protestant, as I did, my only understanding of saints was from popular culture, the names of cities, or via sports such as the ontologically evil New Orleans Saints of the NFL, or colleges like St. Bonaventure. As such, I was mostly clueless about saints and sainthood before I started doing the show. I was ludicrously off about some of this stuff. For instance, I had no idea about the canonization process, or really how long it took. I thought it was more akin to the rules of getting into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. 5 years after you retire, a bunch of journalists and insiders get together to vote, and if you get a high enough margin, you get into the Hall of Fame. If you don't, well, there's a vote next year, but your chances really drop out after the first year of eligibility. Basically, I thought the Pope and the College of Cardinals held votes, and the saints were chosen by acclaim. Now, if you're a person who knows how canonization works, you're probably having a pretty good laugh at my expense now, and that's perfectly fine. I do deserve it. But in my meager defense, Major League Baseball is one of the most corrupt and incompetently run organizations in world history, so I just figured they'd copy the Catholic Church. I learned it from watching you, Dad. Even worse, I thought the number of saints was much, much smaller than it actually is. Though the church warns that there's no way to know exactly how many saints are in heaven, the most up-to-date version of Alban Butler's The Lives of Saints, originally published in 1756 and revised in 1956, lists 2,565 known saints. I legitimately thought the number was like 200, maybe less. I mean, not that it really matters. 2,500 is still a minuscule percentage of all the Catholics who've ever lived. I just thought they would have been far stingier with the designation, to be completely honest. So if you're like me before we started the show and are very, very confused about the broad strokes of sainthood, then we've got good news, because we're going to talk about how candidates are chosen, how the canonization process was streamlined in the Middle Ages, and what it takes to become a saint in the Catholic Church. And even if you already know that, it'll be fun anyway, because we're going to talk about the saintly deeds of a few medieval saints, such as St. Louis, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Afra of Augsburg, and the sainted martyrs of Cordoba. Eleanor, what is a saint, technically speaking?
Okay. Technically speaking, a saint is a person who even now is in the presence of God in heaven, and who can be asked for divine intervention as a result of this.
Nice.
Okay.
So you're just up there, right-hand man of Big G. You're like, hey, my boy, You need some help. Like, otherwise, there's a long line of prayers.
Yep.
But if you come in this way, come in through the side entrance, say you know St. Francis, I get you in with the big guy.
Exactly. It's like, escalating to a middle manager, hoping that they can help you out, right?
Speaking to the middle management of heaven. Good God.
And it's like,
that's awesome.
You get them because, people feel like, hey, the local boy will probably have more time for me than the Virgin Mary. She's booked, like it's very difficult to get her attention, right? Or, if you've got a very particularized problem, you want to call someone in who's got the bona fides for this. Right.
Yeah.
So, you expand it where they'll be like, oh, yeah, word, since I know a lot about fishing or whatever. I understand that this is a prayer that should be answered, and I'll go to the big G about it. Right. And so this is basically like how it starts now. Like, it starts off though that like basically as far as the church is concerned, like from an antique perspective, and by that I mean like the late antique period, it starts off with the idea that basically what you've got are the apostles and martyrs. And those are the saints.
Yeah.
Right. And they, that's a limited number, right? Like it's like that, and again, the Virgin Mary, right? So we're good to go. We're good to go on those, right? But people like having the saints, and so they kind of like begin to expand on what this means. So by at least the 4th century, it becomes accepted that you can be a saint even if you haven't died. Right? Because the apostles get in because they were Jesus' homeboys. Mary gets in because everybody loves their mommy. But then otherwise you had to get killed, right? Like, you need to be involved in like one of the persecutions or something like that. At which point in time you can become a saint. But eventually everyone was like, actually, some people are just really good. And so they didn't have to die because they are like cool, right?
Yeah.
So for example, like I don't know, like Saint Simeon the Stylite, who's the guy who like sat on top of a fucking column and let everybody look at him, right? It's like everyone was like, damn, that's really holy, right?
That's so saintly, dude.
Yeah,
thank you.
Exactly. And so people were just like into that, right? So it begins to expand to this idea that it's not just people who've died; it's people who live in, a saintly manner, right? So like that, then we have this expanded idea of what a saint could be. So I mean, definitely, if you get killed for being a Christian, you're basically just in. That's like automatic, straight to the top. But otherwise, yeah. You need to be like giving it the big one, right?
Yeah. So what are the steps in the canonization process? Like what and I mean how long does it take? So, what are we looking at there?
Well, okay, so this is kind of like changed over time, right? So St. Augustine says that like back when he was doing his thing, so like in the 5th century, basically what happened is that like in order for a saint to be recognized, the bishop of whatever diocese that they got killed in sets up a process, right?
Yeah.
And the process basically, like, they go and they're like, did this person actually get killed? Like, basically, like, that's the number one, right? Like, did they get killed?
Or they dead? Yep. Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if they think so, then they can say, okay, yeah, like, I am signing up on this dude. Now, this could also get, like, kicked up higher if there's, like, somebody over them who cares. Then, particularly, like, if you've got, like, it could get sent to, like, the metropolitan authorities or something like that. They could be like, yeah, it's fine. So once the bishop signs off on it, then basically they get the name martyr and they can be publicly venerated. Okay. So like this isn't canonization necessarily, but it is formal recognition. And so as a result, and things that end up happening is like they'll get an altar built over their tomb, right? Or their relics will be taken into a church, right? And then like if you get a bunch of like miracles, then everyone goes, oh yeah, like that's right, you know. So basically, like, but here's the thing, this in technical terms, local veneration like that only means that it exists like within a diocese, right? So if that is what is happening in Prague, right, with St. Wenceslaus, that's cute, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like down in Rome, they care about that so much. Like they're not going to stop you, but they're not going to like be like, oh yeah, now we're doing that too, right? They're just kind of like, okay, but that is for the hayseeds, right? Kind of a deal.
That's for those fucking hicks,
yeah.
not us sophisticated folk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then like theoretically, if you really wanted to, you could like beg the church, right? So for the longest time, that was just kind of the way things worked. Like, so basically, like at any given time, the Pope himself could look at, you know, someone that a bishop has signed up to and said, oh yeah, that's cool. And then when they did that, then they would be brought into the cultus universal. Okay. And so like that is like, you know, a part of the universal Catholic Church, right? But like the things about it is people kind of started worrying that like this system was being abused, and it's like, you know, that popes could be swayed, but like some bishop just going in and being like, it's the hottest new saint craze, the Macarena or whatever, and then like, you know, some people who hadn't been like checked out enough would make it in, right? So like, but at times they would kind of step in, but more usually, very particularly if they are people in the Italian peninsula, or say they are like within the Holy Roman Empire. So like if you've got like one of the bishops in the Holy Roman Empire is getting a lot of veneration, they'll probably go in and be like, slam, yes, saint, right? They're a really great way to become a saint is to be the Pope. Hey, you know, and then everyone is like, wow, God damn, that guy was holy, right? You know,
yeah.
So hey,
that's just that's a participation trophy. That's all that is.
That is
like
totally.
You're the saint. Okay, like come on, man.
It just means everybody liked you.
Yeah.
It's just like a popular pope, like, right? Yeah. So basically, this is just kind of how it was going up till like around the 12th century, right? But then from the 12th century, stop if you heard me say this for a million times before, that's when the church starts getting really powerful. So like in the 12th century, you get your boy Innocent III come in, and Innocent III is like a really well-trained canonical lawyer. And one of the things that the church starts doing is saying, no, there is a process for everything, right? Like this is when the legal juggernaut of the church starts to come up. And as a part of this, they say that they, like the Apostolic See has like the exclusive reservation of saints, right? So what that means is that they themselves have to check out all of like the virtues of a person or the miracles. And so they would usually call general councils in order to look in on this. So with like various popes like sign off on this and they say that this is good, right? So then basically like we have like an end of when like the last saint in Western Europe that isn't signed off on by a pope, and that was in 1153. And that was a Walter of Pontoise, also known as the Saint Gautier, and the Archbishop of Rouen signed off on that one. So like, and that was like it, right? So Pope Alexander III basically is the one who is like, look, so on and so forth. This is just something that the Pope does, and that is it, right? And he actually writes stuffy letters about this and is like, dude, so he's like, y'all just be like declaring anyone a saint who just gets killed. And it's like, some people just got killed because they were drunk and mouthing off. That's not a martyr, right? And so like, you know, so like knock it off right there. And like, you know, we don't all agree about whether or not everyone just said, oh, okay, like, yeah, Alexander III is like the one who did it. But it definitely changes things down the line, right?
Yeah.
So, so Pope Alexander III starts it off. Innocent III is like, yes, I'm confirming this in a bull because there's nothing that Innocent III liked to do more than issue a papal bull. And then, like, this happens with, like, the canonization very specifically of Cunegard of Luxembourg, who was a Holy Roman Empress. And they're like, yeah, look, we're doing it, right? Like, and because Pope Innocent III was the kind of guy he was, like, shit gets more and more elaborate as a result of him. And it's like, oh, you need to, like, we're going to send in, like, the detectives and we're going to, like, have a look at it, right? So, yeah, like, this is still what's kind of used in order to get to the first beatification and then canonization, right? So, there is kind of like a real before and after there. Now, it changes again in the modern period. So Pope Benedict the 14th changes things in the 18th century. And he gets a lot of papal letters out there. And basically he says that here's the procedure that's specifically going to get, like, followed from now on. This changes a couple more times. But we now have a procedure since 1983. Which was brought in by JB2. And so basically, like, you have to go through a very specific process. So first you get declared a servant of God, and that's when you get, like, the diocesan level. So what would have made you a saint in the earlier medieval period, right? So the bishop is like, this person is really cool, like, and they're the ones who start, like, looking into it, right? That usually gets, like, started around 5 years after the death of the person. You know, you got to do it within 5 years or so.
Just like the Hall of Fame. Woo! Go ahead, sorry.
Right, exactly. So then the papacy will open a process, right? And, like, you might, like, the Pope might just wave you through. Like, St. Teresa of Calcutta, JP2 was just like, yep, come on through, right? You know, like, things like that get kind of, like, expedited, right? And so then the second thing is you will be announced as venerable. So, and that's like, you got enough evidence, and then the people who are investigating it will recommend to the Pope that this person be proclaimed as heroic in virtue. So, like, and that means having, like, the various theological virtues. So that's like charity and hope and chastity and faith and blah, 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 blah. So, like, I mean, it's real nerd shit, right? And venerables don't have a feast day, but everyone agrees they're cool. Now, then the next step is becoming blessed. And so being blessed, or, you know, being beatified, is basically saying that the church saying that you are worthy of belief. And that means that you are in heaven and you've been saved. Now, if you're a martyr, it's like, good job. But, you know, obviously we don't get a lot of martyrs anymore nowadays. So for the non-martyrs, you need the occurrence of a miracle through the intercession of a venerable person. So usually this is healing the sick, mostly. You know, like, things like that. So then you look into these things, and to be fair to the church, they will be like, really? Or did you just get better? Right? Like, they'll look into it. So then to become canonized as a saint, you need 2 miracles, very specifically. You can, like, waive the requirement of a second one if people just, like, really quite like you. But for the most part, you need those 2 miracles, and they need to be on record. But that is, as I say, all incredibly new. And from an old point of view, it would be enough for your bishop to be like, yeah, that's cool. But now bishops need to kick it up to the church. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's, so, like, can anyone nominate, like, is there, like, a formal, like, process where you have to, like, write stuff down on a card or a form to nominate, or can, like, some lady, you know, some old lady in, you know, like, I don't know, Spain go to her priest and be like, oh, so I prayed to so-and-so and my gout went away, you know, and, like, or, you know, how does that work? Because, like, I really think it should be the old ladies, but
I think it should be the old ladies too.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order for that to happen, like, the old lady would have had to get the idea somewhere that praying to that person would have helped. So at that point, the person's probably going to be known to that priest as well, right? And obviously then what you would need to do, the first thing that you would need to do is go to your bishop. So you go to your bishop or your archbishop. So anyone can go to their archbishop or their bishop and say, yo, like, I think it's popping off over here, but you do need to get to the bishop. And whether or not they're going to be like, that's nice, dear, or hell yeah, is another question. But again, if we're already to the point where old ladies be praying to you, then it's likely that the bishop already knows about this person already, right? Like there's certain people who the minute they were dying, there was like a timer set on it. Like, I don't know, Mother Teresa, right? Like where they want it so bad, right? That they'll take anything. So like, you know, like there's a whole process going on right now to like get some Hawaiian saint recognized, for example, who like worked very extensively with the leper colonies and things like that. And that is one of the things that will happen is there will be campaigns, right? So as a part of that, people who really believe in it will lobby.
Right.
And they'll be like, yeah, this is absolutely happening. These are things. And the church might be like, I don't know. But like whole lobbying groups do crop up for this now. And it's kind of that I like because it's very similar to the old process where basically if enough people were like really into it, their bishop would be like, yeah, sure, whatever the fuck. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You talked about the old process, and I guess like that is more of like what I was imagining, like at an earlier point in my life where people would just be like, hey, I like this guy, and everybody would be like, yeah, woo, that guy's awesome.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
but like yeah, I just yeah, I don't it's so like, yeah, it's like I get why they changed it. Like, I mean, obviously, because you can't, like, after a certain point you can't have that, because you would just have like every region would have hundreds and hundreds of saints, you know, which you know might not be a bad thing, but like if sainthood is like the thing, like reserved for like popes and, you know, Peter and the mother of Jesus and everything, like, you know, you can't have every Tom, Dick, and Harry from East Bumblefuck, you know, being in there. But at the same time, like, give me the dog saints back.
Yeah, I
who are you to say it's not holy? Who?
Saint Greenfor for life. Hard out, but and like that's the thing is that like the Greenfor thing, I guess, shows the quote unquote problem, according to some, of local veneration, right? Because it's like people might be, and like that's also kind of the problem with the Greenfor myth is like, did this actually happen, or are you like bringing this up as a way to say that the rustics can't be trusted, and that like the church needs better and more specific powers to, you know, crack down on these things. So it's like, and that is a big thing. Like when people are accused of heresy. So for example, during the Donatist heresy, like one woman gets accused of worshiping false saints because she's like praying at relics of someone who like they're like, that wasn't a martyr. Right. So you guys are just popping off. Right. So there's all this kind of like, well, the people can't really be trusted. That is happening as a part of this. Right. So you can understand why the church wants these controls brought in, but also it's like, shut up, St. Greenfor.
Hey,
fuck you.
Hey, come on, man. Yeah, it's like
can't even have any fun anymore. Damn.
Yeah,
because of woke, you know.
Yeah, you can't have dog saints anymore
because of woke. Yeah,
because of pronouns. All our dog saints now have blue hair and pronouns.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, those jokes will never not be funny to me. I'm sorry.
Someone draw me a picture of St. Greenfor with blue hair. Thank you. Yeah, and a they them patch on. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, Saint. Yeah. Yeah, Saint they them. Saint good they them. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So like, yeah, that, you know, that's sainthood, that's canonization. Okay, well I did have one other question. So like, how do they investigate the miracles? Because like come on. Like, you know, what are we like, it seems like you would have to suspend some belief in order to get there, I guess, which is part of religion. So, that's fine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like how, like, are the, because it's not like someone was cured of cancer because they went to a doctor and the doctor gave them chemotherapy or something. It was like somebody was cured of cancer just because some other people or the person themselves were praying about it.
So basically now what happens is you got to be sick with something that we have no known cure for, right?
Right.
So, and then whoever was sick with it or the people around them have to have prayed directly to the venerable person. And then the patient in question needs to be cured. Then the investigation sets in, and it involves a lot of time to, like, having in-depth discussions with the physicians, because the physicians have to say, we don't have an explanation for this.
Yeah.
Like, physicians have to be like, well, it's miraculous in as much as that I cannot tell you why this happened. But part of it, what they say, is that you have to be cured, but the cure has to be spontaneous, instantaneous, complete, and enduring. So it just has to be like, bang, immediately, you're totally better now, and it doesn't go away. Right. And
interesting.
So, and that doctor's like, I do not know what the fuck has happened, right? Which is part of the reason why we don't get so many saints
anymore, because it's like, because it's like, well, even though you didn't follow our thing, this can't go away in certain, circumstances. It's just like, yeah, well, it happens. The human body does sometimes just recover from things as is wont, and it's just like, yeah.
But medieval saints' miracles could be like a real mixed bag, and because they were local, it really depended. So, like, like one of my favorite saints, Saint Procopius of Sazava, or Svate Prokop. One of his miracles was he'd started a monastery and people were doing things in Czech, and then after he died, a bunch of German monks moved in, and then his ghost came back and chased all the Germans out. So
I remember you saying that. Yeah, that's a good one.
So he does a xenophobic miracle, and all the Czechs are like, hell yeah, this guy's holy as hell. I'm going to pray to him next time there's Germans in my backyard. And so he gets basically kicked up the ranks. Everybody loves this shit. And the church is like, yeah, sure, whatever. Fine.
Cool.
It's the saint that doesn't like Germans. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's awesome. I love that.
I bring it up all the time, but it's because I fucking love it. I love it. All right.
I love the borderline miracles. Like, it's not really you did the Scooby-Doo scaring the old people out of, or scaring the developer out of town so they don't build a whatever over the local youth center or whatever. Oh man, I fucking love like edge case miracles.
There's also like hella violent ones, right? So like one of the French saints who's medieval, Saint Foy, like some of her miracles are like, oh, a pilgrim stopped by Saint Foy's like a church or whatever, but he didn't leave what she considered to be enough money as a donation at her altar, so she tracks him down and fucking rips his eyeball out. And everyone is like, well, we can all agree this is a miracle. And it's like, dude.
The saying of tip your fucking waiters, man.
Exactly. And it's like, and she like fucking blinds this guy. And it's like, okay, Saint Foy, I guess. Like, dang, she'd come back from beyond the grave to rip your eyeball out. And everyone was like, so this is a miracle. And I'm like, sure. Fine.
I mean, like, you know what? It defied the laws of physics. We have no explanation for it. And now there's some guy just sitting on the side of the road with, like, no eyeballs and blood dripping down his face. So, like, yeah, sure. Good for you, lady. Good for you.
Yeah,
what else you got?
Yeah.
Oh, man. We should also note before we move on that, there are saints in many other religions. Famously, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, basically anyone who they think has gone to heaven is a saint, which is pretty cool. Like, got the patience, you got the patience of millions of saints. There's only 2,000 here in Roman Catholicism.
Yeah.
Tens, hundreds of thousands over here. Like, come on, guys.
Okay.
And also like Anglicans and Lutherans have saints, but if you're Protestant, that or Protestant adjacent, whatever Anglicans want to call themselves. That doesn't count. Get the fuck out. Like, I don't want to hear about your bullshit saints.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just kidding. It's fine. But yeah, so yeah, let's talk about a couple of medieval saints before we go. The first one, we got Saint Louis, who would have been, I believe, Louis the Ninth of France. His feast day is August 25th. Eleanor, what did he do to become a saint? It seems like it'd be very difficult to do as a French king.
Yeah, well, it is ordinarily, but like basically my boy was about this life. Right. Mm-hmm. Like he was really gunning for it. So like he does all kinds of stuff as like the King of France where like so one of the things that he does is, and I think that people should be canonized just for this because he built like one of my favorite medieval buildings, which is called the Sainte-Chapelle. It's kind of very near to the to Notre Dame in Paris. So it's like it's now inside of the Hall of Justice, which is quite funny. And it is really gorgeous. And what he did was like go around collecting hella relics and putting it in there. So it's like he's got like the crown of thorns, part of the true cross, some of the passion relics, which he got because he went on crusade. Right. And like he went over like to Egypt, got taken prisoner, which is very funny. And he would like then during his captivity, he recited the divine office every day. And then like even after then he got let out by the Egyptians and he went to the Holy Land anyway. Right. He forbid usury in the kingdom. And like, which, you know, also he used to just take a lot of money from Jewish people, like, and like basically like he imprisoned a bunch of Jewish people, and like tortured them probably and made them say that the Talmud had stuff where it talked about how they hate Christians. And it's like, sure. And anyway, like people were like, hell yeah, this is great. Pope Gregor the Ninth then basically tried to seize all copies of the Talmud and destroy them, but that was considered good at the time, right? And he burnt like 12,000 Talmuds as a part of this, and everyone was like, "This is fucking hot. We absolutely love this." He founded a bunch of hospitals, which is like the Filles Dieu, which is like my girls, reformed sex workers. He like puts places for blind men. He tried to like really crack down on sex work in general, which is like one of the things that you're supposed to do is be like, oh no, I'm going to help these poor fallen women. They still need to exist, but oh God, like, oh, isn't it sad? Right. Like, so like he's involved in the Seventh Crusade. He lives in Jerusalem for 4 years. And then it's like he dies. Right. And when he dies, it's like, oh, it's discovered that he was wearing a hair shirt under his fancy clothes the whole time. What a surprise, right? So, like, which is like what you got to do if you're a fancy boy, right?
Yeah.
So, like, all of this basically, and like that, and like he really expands the Inquisition in the French lands, and like tries to like get lots of people in trouble. Like, so basically like the prosecution of the so-called Cathars really ramps up under Louis. So all this stuff is stuff that the church likes. So he gets kind of kicked into sainthood really quickly because this is like a model as far as the church is concerned for how all kings should be behaving themselves. Right. So it's like, yeah, he's absolutely like giving sloppy ass top to the church, right? He's doing whatever it takes. He's handing over money. He's going on crusade, you see, guys, right? And so it's like this is for them something that absolutely is worthy of veneration because they want everyone to do it. So as a general rule of thumb, one of the easiest ways to become a saint in medieval Europe is be a very holy royal. Because you have to be seen to be doing like kind of things that are in contravention to like the general royal life. So you need to be wearing a hair shirt when you're dead, right? Because they'll be like, oh, he wore fancy clothes because he had to, but really he was like aesthetic and like living a horrible life, right? So and also, if you just persecute the shit out of Jews, people loved that in the medieval period. It played very well. So yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's Saint Louis. Sometimes the saints are kind of cool, and sometimes they're this guy. But I guess, like, oh, he wore a hair shirt the whole time. It's like,
So it's cool. Yeah, so it's fine. Right.
all right, cool, man. Yeah, but next up we got one of the greats.
One of the greats.
Saint Francis of Assisi. He's walking around with birds everywhere flying to him. Things are just crawling all over him. He can't get away from the animals. They won't leave him the fuck alone.
No, exactly.
What his feast day is October 4th. What's this guy's deal? Stigmata much?
Oh, I know, right? Like, this motherfucker loved a stigmata, right?
I love holes in my hands.
Yeah, I know. Couldn't be me. Could never be your girl. Yeah. But yeah, he's one of the patron saints of Italy, and for good reason. So he, again, has this kind of like typical, like, this is one of the archetypal ways to become a saint as well. Like, he's one of the best to ever do it. But St. Francis was born a fuckboy. He was assigned fuckboy at birth, and like, he basically was the son of incredibly wealthy parents in Assisi. His parents were silk merchants. His mother was French. So that we're dealing with some incredibly fancy people. And he was like, I love the troubadours. I like things that are not Italian. I be getting fancy clothes. Basically I'm having sex and all these things. And then one day, like, he just wakes up and he's done with that shit. Right? Like, so basically he gets caught because he is in a war against Perugia, which was the style at the time, and he's taken prisoner. And he's like, you know what? He gets back to Assisi and he's like, no, I'm done. Right. And he has like a big kind of like come to Jesus moment, and he decides that he's going to give everything up. So he goes on pilgrimage to Rome, and he starts begging along with the poor people in front of St. Peter's. And like, he's like asks God to give him divine illumination. And then so one day he is outside of just a tiny little country chapel, which is like, they're basically like a room. They're not fancy, in this place called San Damiano. And an icon of Christ says, Francis, Francis, go and repair my church, which, as you can see, is falling into ruins. And so like, he's like, like, Francis basically interprets this as like, how the church is really rich? Maybe you should do something about that. So he like goes and hides in a cave and is like, my dad is going to be so pissed off. And indeed his father like drags him home, beats him, and locks him in a closet. But he decides to just completely dedicate himself to a life of apostolic poverty. So he's like wandering around as a beggar. He refuses to like have any property at all. And very particularly, he's a big preacher, right? So he goes out and he like talks to people. And if people won't listen, he'll preach to the motherfucking birds. All right. This gains a lot of attention. And he founds the order of the Friars Minor, or the Little Brothers, or the Franciscans, as we call them. And basically, he is like, we are going to live like the apostles did, and we are going to preach to people. Now, this is interesting because the order is actually approved by Pope Innocent III, who is like, Mr. You've got to get permission. And it gets okayed because he ends up having a dream one night that St. Francis is like propping up St. Peter's Basilica, that it's falling down, and St. Francis is the only thing holding it up. So he's like, yep, okay, fine. Bzzzt. And then, he gets the stigmata during like his final days, where he's like praying on Mount Verna. And like, he was in a 40-day fast prepping for Michaelmas, because Michaelmas rocks. And he received the stigmata, and everyone was like, okay, word. And basically then like he dies, and he's like kind of taken back. And like Gregory the Ninth, who is by this point the Pope, is basically like, yep, here we go. bang, like we are sainting him up, sainting hardcore sainting right now. And basically everyone had just agreed he'd had enough miracles already. He had stigmata. He was talking to wolves. You know, he'd had all these visions. You know, and everyone just was like ready to rock. So like literally he gets declared a saint like 2 years after he dies, and they start like making the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. So like he is like a real one, but he does. So this is the thing. In order to become a saint in the Middle Ages, what do you need to do? Be born rich and give it up. Right. And there's this politics here as well, because by saying, oh yeah, we want like this guy to be brought in and he's going to cleanse the church, it basically allows you to kind of like continue living your feisty little life as like the Pope, but you're like, no, the Franciscans are doing it, right? So the Pope's like that. But these are the things that you need to do in order to be a saint. You know, he's come up with a whole new way of doing monasticism, and he is poor, and like, yeah, it's cool, right?
Yeah, he's you know, everybody liked him. They laid the foundation stone on the Basilica of St. Francis the day after he was canonized. So like they were like, let's get this one done. Like, we're not waiting the 5 years. We're skipping everything. We don't care. Pope's just like, get him in there. Everybody likes him. Everybody, you know, we like the Franciscans, at least for now. You know, he's associated with the Poor Clares. We love him. Let's go.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And yeah, we've talked about St. Francis of Assisi before. I actually almost at like a little auction thing for my school, some local, or for my kids' school. I'm sorry, some local like yard maintenance place put out donated a St. Francis of Assisi statue.
Hell yeah.
You know, they should go in your yard. You know, there's a little water fountain for birds and everything. And I almost got it, but then I thought people might think I was Catholic. But yeah. I considered it for a moment. Yeah.
It's like, I'm just vibing with my boy, actually.
Yep, just hanging out. I just like him. He walks around. He's in tune with nature, just like me. He was... St. Francis was clearly smoking weed outside, just like me.
Agreed.
On the patio. Yep. Anyway, next up we've got maybe a lesser known one to a lot of people, but one of the early ones. Also, me and her both agree. Fuck Diocletian.
Yeah.
Saint Afra of Augsburg, whose feast day is August 7th. What did she do?
She's a really interesting one, right? Because she is like, medieval people get really into her. So she's not exactly a medieval saint, but she's not like early either. She's kind of like 4th century. So it's like, you know, this is a bridging time. And her legend is an interesting one, right? She's basically like, apparently she was living up in Augsburg. Her family had been pagans living on Cyprus. And they move up to Augsburg for reasons, ? Right? So now we have varying ways of talking about her. Either she had been dedicated to the goddess Venus and so was working as a hierodule, which is like someone who fucks but holily in the temple of Venus, right? Like either that's what was going on, or she was running a brothel, right? But then she converts to Christianity. And is like, I'm done with that shit. No more fucking for money or holiness or whatever, right? And she then ends up hiding the Bishop of Hirona, who was like fleeing Diocletian. And he was like, no one is going to live for me in Augsburg. And it's like, no doubt, I would definitely not look for the Bishop of Hirona in like what is now northern Spain in Augsburg. Like even now, I would be like, that is not...
Yeah.
That's not the place where I would like...
There are a few places you could probably go between Hirona and Augsburg.
Yeah, so it's like... So one version is that she'd already converted to Christianity, but another one is that like she decides to hide the bishop before she converts to Christianity, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then he converted her. But anyway, then everybody finds out that she's Christian, and she gets brought before Diocletian, and they're like, well, sacrifice to the pagan gods. She's like, no. So they burn her to death on an island in the Lech River. So yeah, like that was cool. But like one of the other versions is that she's beheaded. Right. And so she is one of these saints that I bring up more specifically because this is another great way of becoming a saint. Now, get martyred. Like, that's a very, very quick, right? Like, that's absolutely surefire. But even if you're not going to get martyred, a big way for women to become saints is to be a sex worker and give it all up. Right. So there's St. Mary of Egypt, who does this. Also, then there is of course, Mary Magdalene. And why this is interesting is because it's like, again, it's that you've got to give everything up. So part of it is like admitting that sex work is a really good way to make a living if you're a woman. Like, you can be rich as hell, right? Because like no one gives a fuck if poor people are holy, right?
Yeah.
If you are holy and poor and like you're eating vegetarian, everyone's like, yeah, dude, whatever.
So what?
So what? Like, you're just broke, right? But if you are a sex worker and you're eating like good meat every day and you're wearing nice clothes and you go, oh, actually, I'm going to give it all up, then everyone goes, oh shit, this person is holy. And so it's interesting because there's this gendered aspect here, because it's like the women saints come in two flavors. It's like either you're a virgin or like you were a sex worker. Okay. Like occasionally some people's mommies sneak in there if they were queens. But it's like, yeah, that's the three. Virgin, queen, or former sex worker. So like it just comes up a lot, which is why I threw Afra in there. And I've got to deal with Afra all the time because she gets brought up a lot in my work, because every time everyone is trying to like convert sex workers, they build a temple dedicated to her. A temple? They build a chapel dedicated to her, not a temple. But yeah, she's one of the she is obviously the patron saint of Augsburg, and like her tomb is still there, which is I would like to go visit it someday, right? So yeah.
And that's going to bring us to our last one here. We've got the 48 martyrs of Cordoba, who were 48 Christians killed between the years 850 and 859 under one of the, let me see here, one of the Muslim administrations of Al-Andalus.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know which one specifically, but yeah, they got killed by the Muslim authorities, and so everyone was like, "All of them saints."
Yeah,
give it to them all. Even that one guy who was just kind of there, he's like, "I just showed up. What's going on? I don't understand." Basically,
yeah, right. So it's like there's a kind of crackdown in Cordoba at the time, because it had been like a kind of more Christian kingdom, and like they in the 9th century you have like some more conquests of the area. So we know a lot about the martyrs of Cordoba from Saint Eulogius's basically writing about them. So he gets killed in 859. And this is like, so basically one of the things that kind of is like happening is a crackdown where people are like, there is a bit of a change in attitude for rulers at the time. So like, this kind of goes back and forth. Like at times, like on the Iberian Peninsula, there's like this idea of convivencia where everyone kind of like is getting on and living together. But then there'll be periodic crackdowns, right? But in particular, there's this one emir, Abd ar-Rahman II, and he's like, actually, Christians are abusing the memory of Muhammad. Or they're like going into mosques, which they don't want, or like they're conspiring against the government, right? So there's a bit of a crackdown. And now, like, some of it is true that, like, just some random Christians got. But sometimes some of them are, like, gunning so hard to get killed, like, they want it so bad. So, like, one of these people is St. Lucretia, who Eulogius writes about, and that's how we know about her. And St. Lucretia was basically born a Muslim, and she decides to convert to Christianity. And they notice that she has converted to Christianity because she's like not going out to parties and like having a nice time as much. And her parents are like, what's going on with all this? And she's like, nothing. But then they're like, I demand you dress up like a hoe and go out to parties right now. And she's like, okay. But she's like secretly meeting up with priests the whole time. And anyway, like then she gets caught and they're like, could you like just knock this off? Like, I'm begging you to just, like, go home and continue to be a Muslim. And she's like, no. And also, you should kill me. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No one was talking about killing one of the most important, like, daughters in the city. No one was, like, trying to kill a little, like, rich girl right now. And she's like, no, I guess you're going to have to kill me. And, like, basically insists on getting, like, burnt to death. And they're like, all right, like, that is it. You were completely out of pocket. And they do indeed burn her to death along with, like, a bunch of other saints, right? So she gets killed. And then it's like, bada bing, bada boom, martyrdom. But I bring her and the Martyrs of Cordoba up as well, because this is another one of those big medieval ways. It's like, yeah, if you can get yourself killed like Muslims, you are in, homie. Like, you are so in. They're just like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, oh, duh, you see how they are down there? Good God, right? Like, and somebody wrote it down that like you died. Great, right? Like, so then, you know, eventually Saint Eulogius is also confirmed as a saint. And like he is fairly important still, like within like the Spanish calendars. So like he like is the one who like wrote all about the other martyrs, but eventually he gets like pulled in and beheaded. So yeah, like, yeah.
The you know, you see the flavor for the saints. You know, some people are martyred, some people are rich and leave it behind. Some people are possibly sex workers and leave it behind.
Yeah.
And then some people are just, you know, the King of France. And, you know, sometimes you just got to throw them a bone. Just throw them a bone.
Throw them a bone, baby.
Yeah. You know, I think that's going to about do it for today. We wanted to talk through some saints, and we did that. Not sure what we're going to be back with next time for the regular episode, but this Friday we will have the episode on Habsburg, just Habsburg stuff in the news.
Because they're in the news. They're in the news, dude.
They are in the news because it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, But other than that, that's going to do it for us for today. Eleanor, what's going on with you?
Yo, I haven't like done much because I've been filming TV shows and jet lagged, and I don't even know where I am anymore. But hopefully I'm going to write something for the blog in the next week or two. I might do another saint, because I haven't done one of my saints in a while. But also, a friend of the show, Florence, showed me a picture, which made me very angry. And so whenever I see a picture that makes me angry, I have to write about it. But something might pop on, going-medieval.com. You don't know. You can always check out my book, The Once and Future Sex, available now in paperback, or get it out of your library. You know? Why not? And in other words, you know, your girl's on the socials at Going Medieval most places, but on Insta at Dr. Eleanor Yanaga, all lowercase, because someone else is Going Medieval and I'm very tired. So yeah, that's where I am. Cool. I'd be posting. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. You can find me, Luke is Amazing, Luke is Amazing on the socials. You can find my old show, People's History of the Old Republic, wherever you're listening to this. But yeah, as I said, that's going to do it for us today, and we will see you next time.
Bye.